All right, gearheads, welcome to the show. We just watched the Formula One Monaco Grand Prix. Charles Leclerc brings home the win for Ferrari and for himself and for his dad, he said on the radio. It was really fantastic to watch Charles Leclerc take this win. This is John Massengale in the studio in Austin, Texas, joined by Jonathan Green. Bob Varsha is not going to be with us, and Chris Medland is going to join us from Monaco here in just a minute. We're going to break it all down for you right now. Jonathan Green, happy for Charles Leclerc. You have to be.
I thought it was great to see Prince Albert's reaction. He's been a steward and promoter of this event, his home event. He's such a great character for Monaco. And it means so much. I mean, Monaco, can be maligned. It is a rich boy's paradise. But this kid wasn't a rich boy, as Crofty said in the commentary. The son of a hairdresser. This is a true partisan win for the people of Monaco, not just Monaco, the sort of celebrity hub for the rich and famous. This is a homegrown hero, and he's gone through the ranks from Formula 3 to Formula 2, and he dreamed all his life of this moment. And like I said, I mentioned the story of him crashing at Raskras and the historic, and it was like, it was the typical, oh my gosh, am I ever going to get any luck here? And so the luck has finally turned and the curse is gone. Well, and I, for one, am delighted.
Well, he said, thinking of my dad while driving, he said it was a dream of ours. He said, I have to say I was thinking of my dad a lot more than I expected while driving. So, and his dad passed away in 2017 while Leclerc was racing in Formula 2. So, yeah.
I was at that race.
Oh, wow.
And it was, and he put on a hell of a show, to be honest, because everybody thought he might just pull out. Yes, it was a very emotional time and moment for him. And he's been through a lot. He lost his good buddy in Japan, and Jules Bianchi. There's some, and really, when you think about it, he hasn't had the winning that a man of his caliber really deserves. And I'm also thinking of Fred Vasseur. I think it's a huge thing for him, having been here many years with Hamilton in Formula 3. He's got the pedigree here, but not with Ferrari. And while Ferrari have had their success here, and I also think another poignant point, 24 points now, the gap. I mean, look, I'm just looking at a marshal crying, and that's the other thing. These marshals are volunteers just to be part of the event. You can see them here, holding back the crowd, but they do it for fun. And these are the Monegasques, and they will be so proud tonight to be calling their French brethren and their Italian brethren across the way going, yeah, we got one.
Yeah, and let's talk about that, the Monegasque versus the people of Monaco. It's not the same, is it?
Yeah, it is not the same, no. Monaco, you could almost say, the people of Monaco are the service industry that services the hotels, the tourism, and the rich and famous that live in Monaco. The police, the service people, the government people, the bureaucrats, the restaurateurs, the waiters, etc. It's not a big principality, but it's basically, part of France. He is, for want of a word, French. And so the people of France, from Monaco to Nice to Paris, will celebrate tonight. It's a very special moment, and I can assure you that young man is never going to buy a drink in the Principality again. Not that he probably does, but
well, it's would you have believed we would have said after 8 races at the beginning of the season that both Ferrari drivers have won a race?
Yeah, and also, is it 5 different winners now, or 4 different winners? I mean, that in itself is, what we need to do today is focus on.
Yeah, we don't have quite that many because we've got, obviously, Max, we got Lando, and both Ferrari drivers. So, we've got 4 different winners now. So
4 different winners, yeah.
Yeah, but still, amazing.
Yeah, and I think the way we've got to look at today is not so much the spectacle, it's more the results and the fact that now there is just 24 points between Ferrari and Red Bull. And if we go to Spain, the commentators said, if we go to Spain and there is a similar outcome and it isn't a 1-2 for Red Bull, then we've got one heck of a 2024 on our hands. I mean, we're talking about 2021 again, but instead of 2 drivers, we have 6 that are all capable of taking wins off each other. And that is the most healthy thing Formula One has had in years.
Huh. You know, I just saw a stat. Sean Kelly actually tweeted it. Said, "Is this top 10 finish in grid order was the first time in F1 history." I didn't realize that. That's a pretty amazing stat. First time in F1 history. And actually, think about it. Charles Leclerc, Carlos Sainz, lucky to have that because of the way the grid order was reset after he had a puncture at the very beginning of the race. And very lucky.
Yeah. And I feel happy for him because, you know, it was an innocuous touch. Nowhere to go for Oscar Piastri. He wasn't trying to defend. He wasn't trying to do anything. Sainz was in the right place as well. It was totally unlucky. So he deserved to get his pay because so many haven't come back into the race because of a silly incident at Sandoval. So,
yeah, very true. And let's go back to the beginning of the race because that was, you know, we always expect something to happen at the beginning of Monaco when everybody comes out of the start and is, you know, literally wheel to wheel where there's barely room to fit 2 of these big F1 cars wide. And that impact between, really, the impact itself was not necessarily between the cars as much as Checo hitting the wall because they're going fast there. But Magnussen tries to get up the inside of Checo. Really, he was trying to stay ahead of his teammate, wasn't he?
Yeah. So if you want to look at if you think about being on board with Magnussen for a second, and I watched this so many times now because I went on the F1 Pro thing. But what happens is the race line on the left-hand side slows down dramatically, right? Because everybody's trying to funnel through. But you want to be on the left-hand side, which is where Hülkenberg was. When that left-hand side slows down, if you are on the inside, then you have an opportunity. Magnussen took that opportunity, got ahead of Hülkenberg, then bounced over the curb while doing so, lost a bit of drive there, remained just about, you know, half a car ahead of Magnussen, but then realized he was in a position where he wasn't far enough ahead of his teammate, and he wasn't far enough behind Perez, who was on the race line, to be in no man's land. So he needed to get across and avoid being squeezed into the wall. So he was going, you know, in his mind to the left, and Perez was just on his line. So he got as close to the right-hand wall as he dared, but he ran out of road, and he had to touch Perez, and then all 3 of them were off. So, and I'm glad that that's how the stewards saw it as well, because Magnussen, you know, we said ourselves in the race, this could be curtains for him if they don't like what he did. But the more I look at it, the more it was really much a racing incident between the 3 of them, and Magnussen cannot be blamed for that.
Yeah, and here's a quote from Kevin after that happened. He said, "I had a good part of my front on Perez's rear, and when he went to the wall, I just got pushed to the wall. I trusted he was going to make space."
Yeah. Yep.
All right, we got Chris Medland. I can hear his microphone lighting up in Monaco. Mr. Medland, how are you, buddy?
I'm good. It's been a bit of a tough weekend, I will admit, but the most thrilling one. But I'm actually heading to Haas to see if Ayo can match him all day, and I keep saying I'm going to try and get to him. Hasn't there this weekend? I totally get Johnny's point and what he's saying, and I think so. Perez actually, I think, had Hülkenberg, so he could have stayed further left. I think assumed Magnussen was going to back out of having any part of his car alongside him and let him up the hill where the barriers, as you say, are tighter in different places. So I think misunderstanding first lap. It's very tough. You know, tough to make a decision. Other cars in the vicinity that kind of play a big part. I was sat there thinking, trouble. And the same as Johnny, the more I looked at it, the more a mitigating factor. But what I was was that it wasn't investigated at all.
Yes.
Did it? And then decided, no, we don't need to investigate.
That was
That
crazy.
did surprise me, especially, yes, a 10-second time penalty for his collision with a 5-place grid penalty for Canada. Yeah, it surprised me a bit.
Yeah, we're losing a few of your words, Chris. But yes, I was very surprised for them to not investigate it at all. Jonathan, did that strike you the same way?
Yeah, but they did put it out during the race saying that no further action. But you're right, it wasn't noted. It wasn't. I think because of the red flag. If the race had gone on without the red flag, I think you would have seen that typical graphic. We're looking at it. So I think they had a good 15, 20 minutes to look at it during the red flag. And so therefore they didn't announce that they were looking at it. But there's no question that they investigated it, even though they didn't announce it. They had to. And I'm sure Red Bull would have asked them to, had they not.
Yeah, for sure. And look, let's remember that had he gotten some penalty points for this, he could easily have had a race ban because he's only 2 points away. I mean, that's the big story here, right? And you could tell Magnussen after that, they had an interview with him live, and he was, you could just see it in his face, you could hear it in his voice that he was very concerned about his career. I think is what it really boils down to, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think, again, you read between the lines, a lot of upgrades for Haas. They qualified well, both going through to Q2. And sure, they got pinged for an error of millimeters, literally. And so, it makes sense. But what's more important for Io and the team and the drivers is going into Spain, they are looking like a good, strong midfield team, capable of scoring points each and every weekend.
All right, well, coming up right after this.
Canada next rather than Spain.
Oh, yeah. All right, coming up after this, we'll have more from Chris in Monaco, and Jonathan and I will continue to break down the Formula One Monaco Grand Prix. All right, we're live on YouTube and Facebook. Let's see what we got out there with the boys. Boy, lots of comments already.
Sorry for the bad timing. Make a joke there as you're trying to get.
That's all right. Let's test your mic. Give us a countdown 10 or something.
2, 3, 4, 5, 8, 9, 10.
We didn't get 6 out of that. We got everything but 6.
No, who needs 6?
What if I didn't?
It is. It's weird. It's like it's losing. It's losing every 5th or 6th word, like Casey said.
Hey, Chris, you haven't had much good news. Do you want some good news?
Yeah.
They've delayed the 500, so get your stories done, and you're in quids.
There you go. Yeah.
Saw that.
The lightning in the area, they've had to clear the grandstands.
Yeah. It's delayed till they'll start trying to dry it.
No, they haven't announced when. They've not even done the pre-ceremonies. They want to do the ceremonies. So I think what they want to do is scratch the whole thing, which started at 11. Well, would have started right this 20 minutes ago. So they haven't done any of the razzmatazz, the balloons, way back in Indiana, all that kind of stuff. So they're going to try to do that, and I think they'll just keep doing it. They'll keep waiting until there's a possible window of 4 hours, I guess.
Mm-hmm. We got a couple comments. Wood Source says Memorial Day is a great day for a parade.
Oh, very good. That's good.
Yeah.
He says
what time are we on air to, by the way?
We're probably going to go to 12:30 Eastern. Is what it looks like.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Oh, that's good. Yep. What are you writing, Chris?
Here we go. Coming back, guys.
No idea.
Hi, this is Gene Haas, and this is Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
CrowdStrike presents Driven in 60 as the official cybersecurity partner of the Mercedes-AMG Petronas Formula One team. CrowdStrike protects against cyber threats, so the team can focus on what matters, their next win. The revolutionary cloud-native unified CrowdStrike Falcon platform harnesses the speed and power of the cloud to protect and defend organizations of all sizes against increasingly complex threats, stopping breaches before they happen. Because on and off the track, the stakes couldn't be higher. A split second can make the difference between victory and defeat. When every second counts, protection shouldn't slow you down. It should fuel your momentum. CrowdStrike, protection at every turn. To learn more and to try CrowdStrike Falcon free today, visit crowdstrike.com/XM. All right, Jonathan Green, Chris Medland. Chris, let's give your mic a quick check. Give us your eyes and ears.
Oh, this might go badly because as you threw to me then, but I am just walking look in the motorhome. You're losing me based on that sound.
Yeah, we're dropping you, Chris. But yeah, why don't you get to a spot where you're stopped and we'll give it another shot. But Jonathan, look, this is the story of today is Charles Leclerc, after qualifying, was on pole and did what he had to do and maintained the position, didn't make any sort of mistakes or anything, managed the tires and all of that, and came home with the win. And it's a beautiful story. But also we have to look at what happened right behind him, because it's brilliant for Oscar Piastri to finish second. And, he's such a young driver, such a quick driver, and giving his veteran teammate now, Lando Norris, a run for his money.
Yeah, I mean that again is one of the big stories or emerging stories this weekend, and over the last few weekends. With Miami a win for McLaren, a second solid place for them, and a good result for the team overall. It'll be interesting to see what they can do at the 500. But I mean, the impetus with McLaren is huge at the moment. The impetus is not huge at Red Bull. I think at Ferrari, likewise, Sainz actually started brighter because his job's on the line effectively. I really do think that it's looking really good for Ferrari and McLaren to challenge Red Bull for the rest of the season. And that's saying something. And I really hope that is the case. But we've seen plenty of signs of it now.
Well, look, we want to have you join the conversation. This show is really for you guys out there and girls. And the phone number is 512-643-5483. And we do have a caller on the line. We have Bryn in North Dakota. Hey, Bryn, how are you? Welcome to the show.
Hey, good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for getting me on.
What'd you think of the race today?
It was... I think it's unfair for, that Sainz got to go third again. But yeah, I got a strange point on the rules. I think they should change the rules that you can't come off your racing line so people can pass, and they should change maybe the chicane by the swimming pool to see some overtaking, because I think it would be a much more interesting race if there was overtaking.
Yeah, what do you think, Greenie?
Yeah, I agree with you, Bryn. Something's got to happen, and the truth is, I'm a big historian. I love history, and I absolutely 100% believe that we should stay at Monaco, right or wrong, processional or non-processional, parade or not parade. It's too big an event. It's too special in Formula One history. But we must think of some things, and yeah, changing perhaps the swimming pool complex, perhaps changing the tire system where you go on softer tires, so that you have to run a strategy of at least 2 stops would make things more interesting. It needs to be looked at, and there's been a lot of talk about whether Monaco will stay on the calendar. It's staying, and it should stay, but what to do to make it a better spectacle?
Yeah, I'm a lover of Monaco. I've been watching Formula One for 30, 40 years now, if not longer. I love Monaco, and yeah, as you said, it shouldn't come off, but there's been so many attempts at the swimming pool to pass. So if they did alter the chicane there and alter you can't come off your racing line, you can't come in front of somebody, I think it would be much more interesting, and people would watch it more. But yeah, as yourself, I love Monaco, and it would be a dream come true if I ever was able to go there, but I don't think I will. But there you go. Yeah, other than that, it tactically and everything with the tyres, I think George did well to do the full, was it 79, 77 laps on mediums. So that was more than what Charles Leclerc did on hards. But yeah, congratulations to Charles, his first win in Monaco, being a resident, Monegasque there. So congratulations to Charles.
Hey, Bryn, I've got you say you're never going to go. I've been looking at cheap ways of going. Philadelphia is now flying direct to Nice, I think, on American Airlines. So that's the cheapest way there. Don't stay in Monaco, stay in Menton, which is a train's ride away, just 10 minutes away. And I've done it on a busman's holiday, as we say in England. So it can be done. You don't have to stay in Monaco. You don't have to pay ridiculous amounts of money. You can stay in a holiday inn in Menton for $110. So it's possible.
There you go, Bryn.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, thanks for your show. And I wish Radio 5 Live wouldn't cut to rugby and cricket and football. They're commentating on the Grand Prix. They should concentrate on commentating on the Grand Prix. But I love the fact you put it on. And as a truck driver, that's the only way I can, get to listen to it. So I really do appreciate you putting it on. But like I said, I wish I didn't cut back and all the time, and especially when there was 1.5 laps to go and they cut off commentary. That really wound me up a little bit.
Well, Bryn, we're
working on trying to get the commentary to you ourselves. We're all capable of doing the commentary, and we'll bring it to you.
There you go. Bryn, thanks a lot for calling, and thanks for listening, and stay safe out there on the road. I do agree. Look, we all agree that Monaco's super special. It can't go away, but what can we do to make it better? But we got one more caller. We're going to squeeze in one more caller before we go to a break. We got Billy in Kansas City, Missouri. Billy, how are you today?
I'm well, gentlemen. It was a bit of a processional race, of course, but great to see Charles win. My only thing was, I thought that if of all the procession, the one wrinkle that could have happened was Lando. I was curious why McLaren didn't, throw in some kind of, tire change, have him pit. I mean, he really wasn't going to overtake Sainz unless there was, some kind of push. So I just, there really wasn't anything from Lando. I mean, they kind of seemed like they took their fate and sat there.
Yeah, and I felt, because I thought Sainz was going to be out, because obviously with that puncture and stuff, you presume that he's out of the Grand Prix. So I was thinking tactically, McLaren were in a really strong position to do a strategy where they let Piastri be the hare and Lando be the backup, or vice versa, so he could come in and try and push the others. You know what I mean? Use the two cars where Red Bull didn't have that opportunity, and likewise, I thought Ferrari weren't going to have that ability, but they did.
Yeah, they had the and then being fourth, you're not going to get. I mean, I don't know. I just don't understand why. Lando was. They're strong. They're fast. They weren't letting the Ferraris get away, and there was no Max. So, this is a chance, and especially for the constructors' championship, to really put a hurt on Ferrari. If you're McLaren, that would really have put an anvil down, and they kind of took their medicine and said, okay, we won't screw up. We don't want to do anything that will put us worse off. They just didn't really push.
Yeah.
So anyway, good race. Thanks for putting on the show.
Yeah. Thanks, Billy. Thanks, man. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for the call. All right, let's get in another quick break. And when we come back, we're going to try to get some interviews from Chris Medland, who is live on the ground, back after these messages. All right, we're still live on YouTube. Let's see what's going on out there. I want to talk about kind of the fake drama, not fake, the drama that never happened between Max Verstappen and George Russell. But let's see what the boys are saying here.
Pizza in Monaco. I'll take it. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, thanks, everyone.
Is that you, Greenie?
Sorry.
On the podium.
Careful on your bandwidth. I think that's what happened in the pre-show, is that you were trying to use your laptop to watch the race?
Well, yes. Well, no, you've got audio on the laptop, so yeah, I was trying to But if I mute my sound, obviously I mute you as well. So I had to find where to do it locally. And again, I'm still struggling now. So
Yeah.
I'm looking at the results on F1.
Hey, I like Bill
Sorry.
Rucker's comment on YouTube. He says, I'm listening on XM, but hitting the like button here on YouTube. Thank you, Bill. That'll help us.
Yep.
Some likes would help.
Yeah, we need to get more support from those.
I know we
things.
need to do something with that. But Kevin Kelly said the prince is tearing up. Oh yeah, there's definitely.
Did you notice he took a swig of champagne and sprayed it at the boys?
Oh, did he?
Yeah, great.
Hey, Andy P.
He's a good guy.
Andy P has a good idea. I like this one. I mean, I like all these ideas, but Andy P says, I've put forth the idea of a Monaco spec car modification. One-time use rules package. Make it open for back markers to pull an amazing result. I like that.
Yeah.
Let's see. Oh, man, we haven't talked about, thank you, Joe. I've got it in my notes, but Bruno Famin. I want to get Chris's take on this when he gets back on.
Yeah, I don't know what was said, but Chris will probably know by now.
I mean, they said it on the commentary. Basically, he threatened. I said I probably won't use that word on the radio, but that's kind of what he did. Well, coming back.
Hi, this is Jay Leno from JayLenosGarage.com, and you're listening to Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
The Speed City F1 pre-race show on SiriusXM is brought to you by CrowdStrike. Stop today's most sophisticated cyber attacks at the office, the racetrack, and everywhere in between. Learn more at crowdstrike.com/XM. All right, Jonathan Green, during the break, we we're actually talking about something, and we're going to get Chris's take on this too. He's not joined back yet, but Bruno Famin, team principal for Alpine, came out and said some things, and I'm going to find that exact quote, but why don't you tell everybody exactly what happened during the race to prompt those strong words from him, actually.
Well, they were coming out of the famous corner into the tunnel where Ayrton Senna crashed, and Ocon basically crashed into his teammate and took a risk really that you shouldn't do on the first lap, especially against your teammate. But when you put it in the backdrop of this is the French Grand Prix for Alpine in that respect, they have two French drivers, they have a Renault engine. This is the biggest French conglomerate outside of Leclerc and Ferrari, but that's an Italian Monegasque entry. So this is an all French situation. And the embarrassment of both cars hitting each other on the first lap is about as bad as it could possibly get. If Bruno Famin isn't being summoned now to Paris, to the headquarters, to explain why he embarrassed the entire French nation. And I'm being dramatic, but that is how it will be seen and reported by Canal Plus, by L'Equipe, and by all of the French journalists. It is a bad day at the office, and Ocon, will not be popular.
Well, here's the quote, and this is Alpine boss Bruno Famin. He says, Esteban's attack was completely out of circumstances. It's exactly what we didn't want to see. We will draw consequences. We will decide straight away. Wow. I mean, that is...
as you know, Ocon is in talks with Haas and with Mercedes and Williams, and potentially, any one of those seats, both Mercedes and Williams, and potentially now Haas. So he's all one hand off the wheel that is Alpine. He's been in the press disgruntled with the fact of the lack of pace, and Alpine are dead last. And, there's a possibility, we've said it all along, that they could lose both drivers because they're both very talented, both Grand Prix winners. And I think, it'll be a simple conversation of, if you don't want to be behind this project, get out now.
Yeah, well, but it's so unusual for somebody, team principal like that to come out right in the middle of the race. I mean, I know it was.
Well, that's why I wanted to give you the context.
Exactly.
That's why I wanted to give you the context. It's an embarrassment for Bruno Famin.
Yeah, it's like a national embarrassment is what it sounds like you're saying. That's really I mean, that's incredibly strong words. So,
and let's face it, France believe they invented the Grand Prix and invented motor racing, Paris to Rouen. And so to them, this is their 500. This is the proudest moment, as a motor racing person in France, is the Monaco Grand Prix. And now with Paul Ricard and Magny-Cours not on the calendar, this is their only chance to shine.
Yeah. And man, when Ocon...
And they have qualified well as well, which again adds to it.
Yep. And when Ocon, man, his car was way off the ground, completely in the air, and the back was really high. When it came down, honestly, that's the kind of thing where you think somebody could get hurt their back, because he came down so hard. That was a brutal looking.
Well, and he could have caused a 7 or 8 car pileup. Luckily, it's such a slow part of the track that everybody else can see it happening almost in slow motion. But if it had been in the other end of the tunnel, it would have been an absolute catastrophe.
Yeah. The other quote that I'll give you was, did you hear Max Verstappen's quote? He said, "I should have brought my pillow."
Well, he's honest. I'll give him that.
there were some other words in there too, but I didn't read the entire quote. But yeah, I mean, look, that's that, and Max is not used to having a relax in the middle of the top 10. He's usually relaxing at the front of the grid. But yeah. And speaking of the front, thinking about Charles Leclerc, he was literally thinking about his dad up there. But were you like me, just a little bit going, what could possibly happen? Because, I think a lot of people like myself, I wanted to see this win from Leclerc, right? And I thought it would have to be just a catastrophic disaster of a mistake for it to happen. But, you still think about it, like what could happen, right?
Oh, and every driver does, I can assure you. And it has. We've seen many Grand Prix where either people have just thrown it into Rascasse or had a mechanical. Back in the days when you actually had a gearbox rather than electronics, it's over 2,500 gear changes. So imagine what that does to the mechanical gearbox, because that's still mechanical. And even though you're doing it with your hand, and you're not doing it with an H pattern thing like they did in the 60s, just the wear and tear of that alone. And then the concentration for an hour and a half. Jenson Button was again describing it over the weekend as being just brutal, because he said you're banging your head every corner against the pads and stuff. And so there's no let up. And, and it's funny, ironically, when it is processional like that, and because they're so used to the speeds, there is time to think. So I've heard from lots of drivers that they're constantly going over their careers because they've got time to do that, because it's metronomic, the race itself. They really could do a lap of Monaco in their sleep and with their eyes closed. So, yeah, there is that time to have nostalgia and think about the whole career and getting there. And that's certainly what was going through Charles's mind.
I'm just looking at some of the tweets here. Ferrari tweeted out, "Soak it in, Charles," and he's just, jumping into the team like they always do. He was very emotional. You could hear it in his voice. It was really amazing.
Yep.
But looks like Chris Medland caught up with the boss of Pirelli Motorsport, Mario Isola. So let's hear that interview now.
Mario, thanks very much for joining us. I know you need to rush off because it was a delayed race as well, but it wasn't a classic, if we're honest, in terms of racing action. Rarely is in Monaco. You brought the softest compound tyres here, didn't you? Were you surprised that even those on the mediums could make it to the end pretty comfortably in the end?
No, not really, because we know that in Monaco it's such a low severity circuit that the tyres can last for the entire race. It's not a surprise. We are planning to go a bit softer in the range for next year, but it's never enough for Monaco.
I was going to say, some people were saying in the press room, well, why not just have even softer tyres? And obviously the rest of the calendar means you can't do that. But is there almost an argument, is it possible to create a special tyre for Monaco, or is that just unrealistic?
It's not unrealistic. The only problem is to find a track that is similar to Monaco for testing, because to validate our compounds, we always test them on different severity circuits, and obviously Monaco is so unique that we don't have any other circuit that is comparable, and we cannot ask the city to close the track, to close the road for us for testing. It's impossible. So it's impossible to test here, and it's very difficult to find something that is representative of Monaco.
Do you think it would make much difference if we had that, though? Do you think more pit stops and somehow even a tyre that goes off even in Monaco would increase in the entertainment factor?
To be honest, I don't think so, because the problem here is to overtake. And obviously, if you cannot overtake, you have to look at the track position rather than the number of pit stops or any other element. And clearly, they are limited by the width of the road, and they cannot increase it. But the cars are so big, and for example, we had a very good race with Formula 3 with smaller cars, with a lot of overtaking and action. But Formula 3 are smaller and they can do that. With Formula 1 it's very difficult. And we know from experience that in this case teams are just managing the pace to extend the run and to reduce the number of pit stops. Or you have to oblige them for a higher number of pit stops, but I believe that the result could be that they are going to stop at the same lap and not really making a difference.
Yeah, it's always looking like it's trying to find something to fix when it's still a special race. How's it been from your perspective this weekend? Still a good one?
Still a good one. We know that Monaco is defined by a qualifying session, and it is what it is. We have to accept that if we race here. I'm not negative for that. It's just a different race.
It is indeed. And a race that Pirelli still won, so well done.
Yeah, you're right.
Grazie mille.
Yeah, what do you think, Greeny?
Yeah, well, Mario put me straight. I said more pit stops, and he said no, it's the overtaking. I've got an idea. Okay, here's what we do. We make it a mini 500 idea, which is we take the Formula 2 grid, the Formula 3 grid, and the Formula 1 grid, 60 competitors, all in Formula 3 cars, starting on Monday, whittle it down to 25 by Friday, and then Antonelli can race, Leclerc and whatever, but they're all in Formula 3 cars.
I like your idea, but I think we're going to need to just go ahead and go all the way down to karts to make 60 cars.
Even better.
Yeah, even better. Yeah. Well,
then you could have all 60 out there.
Yeah. Hey, here's a quote from Io Komatsu of Haas. He says, "It's been a Sunday to forget, and we have to learn from this weekend and move on." Yeah. I'm still surprised they didn't look at Magnussen closer, but yeah, that's about all you can say. I did see a couple of comments on social media about Alpine, like what's going to happen there. Well, the question was, what would happen? Who's going to get in those seats, Greeny? I mean, if they bring the axe down.
Yeah, to be honest, the one guy that seems to be missing out of the conversation is Jack Doohan, who's impressed me as both a human and a racing driver over the last 2 years. And he sat there with Alpine, colours on and not driving at the moment. And so, they've got plenty of people. There's plenty of, Alpine juniors that are capable. What I'm getting at is if Ocon has decided to leave the team and has an offer to leave the team and accepts that offer, it's a bit like Hamilton. He's surplus to, requirements. And if he's crashing the cars, both of them, we know that there's a lot of history between Gasly and Ocon, but the point is, they really need to move forward, and they were qualified really well today, and it all went horribly wrong. So somebody's got to take the blame for that.
All right, coming up after this, we'll see what interviews Chris gets. We'll continue our discussion, and just stick with us because the Indy 500 is delayed, and you can just hang out and talk with us. You're listening to Speed City F1. Back after this. Hey, Greeny, I just saw your text where you said, got an idea. Was that what you already talked about?
That was it.
Yeah, okay.
I thought it was good.
Yeah, it's great. I just flipped over on the TV, so we got Danica Patrick and Jimmy Johnson sitting there talking about the rain. Let's see what
a woman and a racing driver.
Yeah. Let's see what the boys are talking about, boys and girls on. I got to stop saying boys and girls. The men and women. It's going to get me in trouble, right?
Yep.
David Lawrence says, JG, I love this idea. Let's do it.
Thank you.
Yep. TW, he said the word that shall not be spoken. He said, wonder if Mazepin has any money left. David Lawrence, does that mean y'all are on till 1 p.m.? Probably, David. Depends on how much content Chris can get us, and
what time is it there? It's only 11.
Well,
there, isn't it?
it's 11:20 here, but 12:20 he's talking Eastern time. So
yeah, it's 12. Yeah, what time are we on to?
Probably till noon.
Okay,
my time, 1:00 Eastern, and we got a caller. Yep. We'll go to this caller here when we come back. David Lawrence, podium made the hard tires 77 laps. Hell, George Russell nursed the medium 77 laps and made the tires fall off and a better product. Because they're talking about all different methods here. In fact, Sean Kelly had an idea about this. See if I still have that up. Since they're debating the tire issues, I've always advocated they should run 3 compulsory dry Pirelli compounds in Monaco. Cost nothing. Everybody agrees we got to do something.
Yeah, I mean, we do, because we've got to preserve it. It's as simple as that.
Exactly.
I mean, Indy's gone through this with the 500. The month of May,
Here we go.
They've managed to keep it.
Hi, this is Karun Chandok, and you're listening to Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
All right, welcome back. We are taking some calls if you want to give us a call and give us your opinion on Formula One Monaco, anything the above. 512-643-5483. 512-643-LIVE. Give us a call. We have a caller on the line right now. We have Daniel in St. Louis. Daniel, welcome to Speed City. You want to talk some Monaco?
Let's do it, my friends. Let's do it.
Well, what's going on? What are your thoughts?
All right. So, what are your guys? I just got in the car and just hopped on. But Magnussen definitely should have been at least at fault for what happened today. He could have backed out either in turn 1 or as they approached going up the straight. He definitely could have backed out, and that all could have been avoided. And it really sucked because Nico ended up getting stuck in all of that, and he was just kind of a bystander in what happened because of his teammate.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair point, and it's a way of looking at it. I kind of disagree in that he'd done the hard work, which he got past Hülkenberg, but left himself up with no. Going on the inside at Monaco is great, but it's not, because you're on the outside as soon as you got through Saint-Devote, and you're not on the racing line. And he did bounce over the curves, which means he has to have lost drive to Hülkenberg, and therefore made his life even harder. So you're right. He knew. I mean, he's so experienced. He knew damn well what he was getting into, and he was chancing, as you do at Monaco. But
at the very least, he knew it was very risky, and he said afterwards he was counting on Checo giving him room, but it's Monaco.
And actually, and actually he could have done, but I actually think he was unsighted. If Perez had seen him there and how close he was to the wall, he could have easily just swayed slightly to the left and still held the position, because he wouldn't have overtaken Perez, in my opinion. But life is life.
And I think also a very telling thing was just listening to Magnussen talk about it. It was almost like he was trying to convince us a little bit of that. So.
Yeah.
No, I hate to interrupt, but watching the replay too, I do have to say, being a Red Bull fan, being a Red Bull since Seb was back in 2010 and everything, watching him run those 3 years was great. But looking at the replay and looking at Perez's in-car, he actually looks to his right and sees Magnussen there. So I do kind of got to give Checo a little bit of fault too, because he saw that Magnussen was on the inside, and being that Kevin, the way he's been the past 3 races, you kind of got to just watch, and Checo should have taken that into account as well. But
well, it certainly was. I can certainly understand both sides of this argument, I was really kind of leaning on agreeing with you, Daniel, because it looked like that was going to be points for Magnussen and a race ban. But well, Daniel, thanks for calling in, thanks for tuning in. We really appreciate it. Hey, Daniel, Jonathan, we have not talked about something, actually a pretty big deal that happened today, and that is points for Williams. Because Alexander Albon ended up with 2 points today.
Yeah, and I was looking at the Constructors' Championship. It's really getting interesting. So I will reiterate what I said before. We now have 6 cars who are going to fight for this year's championship. And what I mean by that, constructors-wise, basically Mercedes are 4th to McLaren's 3rd and Ferrari 2nd, 24 points behind Red Bull. And Mercedes will be a factor, but I can't see they're on 96 versus McLaren's 184. And so I think the midfield battle will be between Mercedes, Aston Martin, and RB. But to get Williams now up to 8th position, as you rightly point out, equal with Alpine, and that's again another reason why Alpine are so fed up, is it could have been a day where they were moving to 8th position in the championship. And instead, they've now dropped to 9th, and Williams have moved to 8th.
Oh, first of all, Chris is back. We're going to get his opinion on this. But look at the constructor stand. We have to just stop and say what you said again.
I know.
Red Bull 276, Ferrari 252. Where we are at 8 races in, no one would have guessed this. And McLaren not far behind at 184 and coming fast. What do you think, Chris? Right when I said that, his mic went dead, it sounded like.
Dropping Daniel Ricciardo. Then also getting Oscar Piastri in there. And it's why Sergio Perez, every time good, then the heat goes on.
Dang, Chris, your mic dropping out bad. We guess we don't have a good spot. I thought you were in good because I could hear it for a long time. But yeah, this is really a huge, development, I guess, for lack of a better phrase, because, coming into the season, we're getting so much grief that Max was just going to win everything. And
John, just look at the Drivers' Championship. You've really got some classic battles. You've got Max and Charles at the top, split between not a great deal, 169 versus 138. And then you've got Carlos Sainz, their counterparts, Carlos Sainz and Sergio Perez, 4th and 5th, 1 point apart.
Yeah.
So, these are vital points. And then you've obviously got the pairing of Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris, who clearly now have shown that they too are in position. And Norris is not that far off. He's a race win away from Leclerc at the moment.
Well, and think about the constructor standings, where they are. They're 24 points apart. I mean, I know that would take a DNF for Ferrari to overtake Red Bull, and another bad run by Checo. And we have to say that, Checo started the year off with some momentum, right? But, I mean, he's dropped all the way down to 5th in the constructors. I know it's only by 1 point, but still really amazing that we're having all this competitive. And don't get me wrong, I'm not rooting for Red Bull not to do well. I'm just rooting for a competitive championship, and I think that's a fair place to be.
Yep, I agree.
Let's see. Chris his mic's. Hey, Chris, we're going to give you another shot. Where are you now? Where are you now, buddy? Give us eyes and ears.
Yeah, I hope you guys have got me now. I'm outside near Williams, and I'm trying to see if I can James Vowles, if he's still here. One of the reasons, much aside from the fact that the signal drops out, a lot of people rushed off because of the red flag delay. Get too tight for them to get out of here. And I always think it's ridiculous. I mean, delays, that it's going to incidents, and we could have red flags.
Chris, it's still doing still doing the same thing, buddy. Maybe a reboot or something, but yeah, let's see while we wait for Chris. Jonathan, what else from today's race? Have I missed anything that we?
No, another good result for Yuki, though. He is now becoming a very accomplished racing driver, in my opinion. He's not making mistakes. I was on board with him. I split my time between, I knew it was kind of going to be processional. So from my onboard point of view, I spent time I wanted to do a study, Sergeant. I wanted to see if he was making mistakes, if he was driving not erratically, but not capable of being where he is. And there was no signs of that. He drove very well today and put in a decent performance. All right, he didn't score points, but, he held his own. And, going back to the interview he played before the race, he knows the marks he's got to hit. And to a certain extent, he's got the lesser car against Albon. But he put it to good use today. He was clean. He looked every bit the Formula One driver. But when you compare that to somebody of the same ilk, i.e. Yuki Tsunoda is, for me, starting to become one of the great stories of this year, and really putting himself forward as a potential driver in the market with Honda, potentially with Aston Martin, potentially with Red Bull, if Perez. I mean, I said to Chris the other day, should we be thinking of Tsunoda in that Perez seat, just even as a stopgap until they get the Ford engine, because it would do his career no harm. He is owned by Honda, or was brought up by Honda. And so why not give him a shot? It would be a real shot in the arm for Japan for a Japanese driver to finally have a race-winning car, and it's the same team.
Yeah, and you talk about the driver market. There was quite a bit of discussion about Carlos Sainz moving to Williams, and in and definitely, hopefully, we'll get Chris back here because he got
why
to
that's
sit
a
down with
sensible
him.
move.
Yeah,
you know why that's a sensible move for Carlos? Because again, a bit like the Audi stroke GM thing, you just don't know how long it's going to take for a new powertrain to come good. Whereas with Mercedes, the 26 customers, i.e. Williams, are going to have a competitive engine right from the get-go. So Williams has, run from 7th and potential mid-run. They could easily be fighting for 4th in the championship next year, and Carlos Sainz will want a bit of that and the chance to win.
Yeah, and Williams team principal James Vowell described Carlos Sainz as a tremendous force of nature. And because
I don't think we've seen the best of him yet.
Yeah, I think he's a serious contender now to replace Logan Sargent. As much as I hate to say that, but Chris, I hear your microphone. Let's give it one. Let's give it one more shot, buddy.
So I thought I've joined at a good time as well. If it's Williams with James Vowell, that one's really taken on some momentum.
Yep, it has, and unfortunately, your mic has not taken on momentum. But you know what? It's a good time for a quick break. So let's take that break, and we'll be back after these messages with more from the Monaco Grand Prix. All right, Chris, we're in a break. Let's give it a test and see what's going on. Maybe you can go to the Pirelli Wi-Fi. I don't know what else, or go get interviews. Actually. All right, no Chris. Says he's there.
Just message.
Oh. Yeah, there you go, Chris. I see your message. He's going to go for a lap to see if he can find any interviews and then head for Wi-Fi. That's fine. Let's do that. But yeah, man, that's a big deal with. I was when I first heard that, I was like, yeah, that's such a big step down for Carlos Sainz. But your point is a good one, Jonathan, that you don't know what's going to happen here, do we?
I mean, if Sainz was a few years older, more like Hülkenberg's age, I would take the Audi, drive, because like Alonso, it's going to extend your career. But Sainz is 27, and so he's got a chance to jump to Audi in the next 4 years. I mean, why not wait till Audi at their top? They wanted him, and wait till they come good. And Audi will come good. They don't do motor racing for fun. So,
Hey, by the way, I just saw Jeff Gordon on NBC said we have every intention of getting Larson to Charlotte. We're going to do everything we can, weather logistics. But wait a minute. So the Indy 500 hasn't even started yet. What time does the Coca-Cola start? So
it starts tonight at 6.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, around 6.
But the problem is, what it is, it's lightning. There's tornadoes and lightning, so it means that planes can't take off either.
Well,
I'm looking at a live picture of Indy, and the stands are empty, the wind is blowing, and it's drizzling. But the problem is they've got a lightning watch. It's within 10 miles of the track. That's when they close it down. So the point is, Kyle's sitting there waiting for the 500, but they want to get him on a plane as soon as they can.
Hi, this is Mario Andretti, and this is Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
So, yes, you're reading my mind, Jonathan. Yes, we are going to talk about Mario Andretti and everything that has happened. It's like every morning you wake up and there's something crazy happening with the Andretti F1 story. And Chris has a bunch of information about that, guys. So stay with us, because actually I don't know if this may be information he hasn't put out or hadn't heard anywhere else about what's going on with Andretti and F1, because that is just crazy now that there's been so much involvement from the legislators. So we'll talk with Chris more about that here in just a few minutes. But yeah, Greeny, I'm looking at the 2024 race results. So just running down that real quick. Remember, Bahrain was Verstappen, Saudi Arabia Verstappen, but then Australia, Carlos Sainz won. And that was, the whole world took a breath thinking, okay, somebody else has won a race. I know that Max Verstappen had mechanical issues. And then Max won again in Japan and China. And then comes the second savior of the season, Lando Norris, who won in Miami and won fair and square. Okay, a little help from a safety car, but that's just racing, right? So Lando Norris wins there.
Still fair and square. No,
yeah.
Still fair and square. He was competitive all weekend.
Exactly. And then last weekend, Max Verstappen wins.
You've got to judge the luck you get on race day with what you've done over the last 3 days.
Yep. Max Verstappen wins last weekend with a gap of less than a second, and clearly McLaren has made huge improvements, and here we are again with another Ferrari. So, we've got a season on and something to get excited about.
Yeah, no question. Like I said, I for me, I know you're the glass half full guy, but I'm with you on this one. I really do think we've got the possibility of a great season ahead with lots of twists and turns, and I think we're going to be getting to Austin with the championship still alive, and that bodes really well.
Are you saying that I have optimism patented? I can't argue.
Slightly.
I did enjoy I don't know how much you saw this on social media, Jonathan. I know you're not on social quite as much as me, but the talk between Oscar Piastri and all weekend long between Piastri and Leclerc, talking about how he was going to adopt him as a Monegasque. About Piastri, and then Piastri's wife got in on the action on Twitter. I don't know if did you see any of that?
No, I didn't.
It was pretty funny, actually. It was really good, and I do. And now, in fact, I didn't even see this before I started saying that. But here's a tweet from ESPN, and it shows one of those kind of family pictures of two brothers, and it's Leclerc and Piastri both in matching plaid sweaters. It's become a full meme, but. Oh, yeah. What else, Greeny? We've talked about the changes that ought to happen at Monaco, but I do see a nice tweet that speaking of Mario Andretti, because Mario is there at the 500, of course. And by the way,
his son's racing. Yeah.
Yep, that's right. And if you are getting ready for the 500, if you haven't fired up the grill, you might run out, pause the radio.
I apologize. His son's not racing. His grandson's racing.
Yes, thank you. Grandson, not son. So,
his son's
yes.
managing it.
His son what?
His son is managing it, but yeah.
Yeah.
By
the way,
just looking at the forecast on Indy, it's pretty bad.
Yeah. One thing we haven't talked about with Leclerc is his new helmet for this race weekend had his father's racing colors. His dad raced
and the Monaco logo as well. The Monaco flag.
And we talked about his dad and the comments that he made. But his dad raced in what, F3?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I believe that's what it was. So, let's see. Jonathan, you talked about Esteban Ocon admitting some talks with Haas.
Yeah. There was a story on grandprix.com, which is, Joe Sayed's personal website, but he's very good. He's at every race. And I always look for he always has a different angle. And he put up a story that Ocon, that basically IO admitting that he had spoken to Ocon about next year. But that was just one of several drivers, obviously. But that's the first time we've actually associated Ocon with a possible move to join Behrman, I guess, at Haas or Magnussen.
Yep. Hey, this penalty that the Haas team had, this interesting little DRS wing problem, right? They said where the uppermost rear wing element, the adjustable positions, they were not quite right. I immediately checked. I was actually on social, I think it was Twitter, and somebody was saying, "Oh, this is just like IndyCar and the push to pass. They were cheating." And I was like, "I don't think so." I think
I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
Basically how you fit. So you design a wing plate for specifically Monaco, right? Just as you would for the 500. It's a very different wing you'll see when you watch. But so you literally have a box that says Monaco rear wing, and for whatever reason, once fitted, it didn't comply. So they designed it to comply, but it must have been probably 0.5 millimeter each side, which makes it 1 millimeter, which means that you could potentially get an advantage, and therefore deemed illegal. But there was no sense of cheating. It's not like the Indy situation at all, in my opinion. So yeah,
I agree, because number one, you're not going to feel that, right? That's going to be thousandths of a second, and you're not.
Not at Monaco, for sure.
Exactly. You're only, you only get 180 something miles an hour for a brief stint there, so you're, and I'm certain it didn't make a difference, but it's just breaking the rules. But there's no way that it would have been anything comparable from a feeling standpoint. The driver's not going to know that happened. But I saw a nice little comment on the Haas F1 team. They just released it, and they're cheering on Pietro Fittipaldi as he gets ready to go race in the Indy 500.
Well, and I tell you what, I'm sure you'll be looking at it as I do. But look at the amount of Formula One influence on the race itself, the greatest spectacle in racing. But you've got McLaren there, you've got Pietro, Pietro there, Ericsson there. There's so much crossover now between Formula One and Indy that everybody in Monaco will be glued to it, I'm sure.
Yeah, you got Alexander Rossi. I guess you could count that one too.
Yep, absolutely. Roman Grosjean.
Yeah, of course, Grosjean. Oh my gosh, we forgot about that. Our buddy Dave O'Neill is the new team principal.
Got to get him fingers crossed.
Yeah, the Hunkels Hollinger Racing Team, and he started the season in Grosjean's ear as a race engineer, and now he's moved up a notch. I don't know who's replaced. Who's Grosjean's race engineer now? I haven't looked at that. So
that I don't know. But remember, he wasn't his engineer. He was his strategist.
Strategist, I guess. That's right. Yeah. But I bet you that. I know this. I'm going to be rooting for those guys because that's really fun to have Dave there. So here we go. I just found a quick little story. Six world champions among F1 drivers to conquer the Indy 500. So that's to conquer it. Sorry, but I want to find the list of current drivers with either XF1 or something like that. But I
can give you that list.
Okay.
Marcus Armstrong, Roman Grosjean, Marcus Ericsson,
Sato
Award, Hello, Sato. That's 6. Who else? That's about it.
Yeah. Well, your point being that it's massive influence. Hey, it sounds like Chris Medland has joined us, and he's connected to Wi-Fi. Mr. Medland, let's give you a try, buddy.
Oh, hopefully Pirelli are going to save us once again. Where I've positioned myself. Is this better?
Yes, it is. Casey's jumping up and down in the producer's room in there. Yes.
You can't believe it. I must say that listeners, I get the full listening experience as well. When I'm walking around, I can hear these guys beautifully. So it's literally just on my end, not getting through when it wasn't on Wi-Fi. But I did jump off and go and finally chase someone down who is still here because they've got big celebrations ahead, which is Fred Vasseur, the Ferrari team principal. And halfway down the paddock towards the Ferrari motorhome, we got stopped by Lando Norris, who was already changed and heading off with some friends to, I assume, just try and get away from the crowds. So there's a bit of an interruption there, and Fred has a bit of a coughing fit. But apart from that, it's quite a good chat. Fred, thank you so much for giving us your time after what I imagine was at times stressful, but at times it looked very much under control. At the end of the day, it's a race win in Monaco. How good does it feel?
Yeah, it's a great feeling for sure, and that and it was under control from lap 1. That now the risk in this situation is to try to push too much or to try to lose a little bit the control because you want to get more, and you have nothing to get more than the win. The drivers, couple of times, they asked to push a little bit more, but we try to slow them down a little bit, and even for Carlos it was even probably more difficult because he has to manage the gap with Piastri and the gap with Russell and so, and but at the end it's
Lando Norris interrupting proceedings with a can of water, I must admit.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah. No, I know. Sorry, what was the question?
You were explaining about the drivers and managing the gap, but did it feel all under control and calm from your point of view?
Yeah, it was under control. The potential risk would have been to push too much and to create a gap with the behind to allow Norris to take the safety car in case of to take a pit stop in case of safety car. But honestly, that we had a decent pace when Charles. He didn't push the last lap, but when he started to put a bit more pressure, he improved the pace by 2 seconds. That I think we had a margin.
Well, firstly on Charles, just how happy are you for him? Because obviously his home race, it must be a really big deal for him to get it over the line. You weren't here when they failed to win from pole, but it must have been hanging over the team a little bit.
No, yeah, for sure that it's a huge release on the shoulders of everybody. First, I'm thinking about Charles because that I think he had the question every single year, and then this year what will happen, blah blah blah, and we'll have a Charles post Monaco and before Monaco, I think. But honestly, also it's good for the team because that they are pushing like hell. That at the factory, we don't have to forget the guy at the factory, and they did a mega good job.
Well, speaking of gaps earlier, Charles is now 31 points behind Max, but for you, as a team, you're within, I think, less than 30 points of Red Bull. Just how much is that down to both drivers?
Honestly, we have 17 races to go, or 16, I don't know. The most important is to think about the next one, not to think about a championship that we have a long way to go, and we have to stay calm.
You're in the fight though, aren't you?
Yeah, but we were in the fight the last 3 or 4 races that we won in Melbourne, then Miami we have everybody in 6 seconds, Imola also, that the fight is there.
But both drivers scoring, that's key, isn't it? Carlos today too, which nearly didn't happen.
But Carlos did a mega good job, and he had a tricky position because we were asking him to push, to slow down, to push, to slow down, and he did it fantastically.
Brilliant stuff. Thank you very much.
Yeah, he cut you off quickly, Chris, when you tried to go there about them catching Red Bull in constructor standings. But look, all hats off to Fred Vasseur because what he's accomplished right now. I mean, somebody commented earlier, I think, on social about no Ferrari strategy errors. I mean, that used to be just every weekend, and that's been eliminated. The team is great. They've got Lewis Hamilton on the way. Who knows who else? I won't even say the word. So it's really all smiles at Ferrari. All right, guys, let's get our last break in, and we got some good stuff. We're going to talk Andretti after the break. One of my favorite parts, we're on YouTube, Chris, one of my favorite parts of the television broadcast was Martin Brundle today. And I don't know how to pronounce the soccer player's name, Kylian Mbappe.
Mbappe, yes.
And
Yeah.
he walked up to him, and his bodyguard tried to shush him away. And Brundle said very clearly into the microphone, where we could all hear it, it says, "It's all right, mate. I'm in charge around here." And literally proceeded to muscle his way in. So, Chris, go back and watch the replay just in case you ever need to get how to figure that out, because Brundle did a great job that time.
I must admit, so I saw Mbappe actually walk past me because I'd gone to the back of the grid to try and get Komatsu, who never appeared. And I saw Mbappe coming. And I was like, he would be quite interesting, but he doesn't do interviews in English normally. I've seen his reason for rejecting in the past at races is saying he doesn't speak English or not well enough. And certainly when it comes to football interviews, he doesn't like to speak in English. And that was the last info I had on that, or last knowledge I had of it. Clearly, his English is much better, because then someone said about they saw me in the background of Brundle trying to get Mbappe. And I said, yeah, I saw that happening. I was like, that'll never work. He doesn't speak English. I was like, no, he got him in the end. Yeah, he ignored the bodyguard and he spoke pretty well. So yeah, I was like, oh, I should have tried. Although I'm not sure whether without a TV camera it would have quite gone down the same. But yeah, it was fair play to Martin. He gets his hours out big time, doesn't he? Big time.
It was good. Hey, here's a good comment from David Lawrence. Wait a minute.
I'm on the radio, Ted Kravitz. Yeah, how's it going? Yeah. Oh, good.
He's talking to Kravitz.
It's delayed in a couple of hours, I believe. They're going to try and dry the track. Yeah. Yes, you do. A couple of hours. Keep going. Yeah, that's all right. That was Ted. He's live on Sky, and here we are live on the radio.
That's cool. Hey, good comment from David Lawrence on YouTube. Wait a minute. Forgot about how Merck teased us on Friday. Yeah, they did, didn't they? In fact, when I was tweeting out on Friday, I was thinking, hey, how many people could win this?
Hi, this is Max Verstappen, and you're listening to Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
All right. Earlier, I talked to Chris while you were away trying to get a good connection. I talked about the Andretti issue that's been going on, how we wake up to a new bit of bombshell with Andretti every day. And you've really got your head around this. And I wanted to give us an update because this is just crazy, it feels to me.
Yeah, it does. So Mario Andretti has claimed that Greg Maffei, the Liberty Media CEO, personally told him that he would do everything in his power to stop Michael getting a team on the grid at a function during the Miami Grand Prix weekend. And that's because that came after Mario's visit to Washington when it was first announced or called upon. Open letter was written to Liberty Media to explain why so far they had rejected Andretti. Now, I always add that in every letter or call for an investigation that's come from US government so far, as much as I still disagree with the decision not to give or grant an entry to Andretti, they have left the door open for 2028 and said when it's the full team in 28 with a GM power unit, we'd be much more open to it. Admittedly, they haven't said definitely going to happen then, but they have not said, no, you're not coming in at any stage at all. Now, that's also, I think, something that Mario and Michael have taken on board. So this claim that Greg said he's going to try and stop that was, it's a big shock and surprise. And obviously I did some digging because you never know if you're hearing it secondhand or even third hand that it's been reported what Mario had said that someone else had said without being there in the room. It's always a little tricky, but it was denied in a sense from Formula One and Liberty Media sources, in the sense that they said Mario approached Greg and started asking questions rather than Mario says Greg just came over and just told him, interrupted the conversation with Stefano Domenicali to tell him it's not going to happen. Now, either way, it shows this is a battle that is turning sour, that the involvement of government and call for investigations is not helping the situation, rightly or wrongly, because we can debate all day long whether it should have been a different outcome prior to now. But yeah, this was the first time that sort of Liberty were being dragged into a direct claim of something really unfair, I guess, or certainly a pretty firm riposte. And we can't fully verify it was said, but I've not had a firm denial that things along those lines weren't said. That's what was telling to me.
Yeah, that's what they denied the way it happened, but they didn't deny that he said those words.
Well, or words to that effect. And I'll admit I didn't say, so he did say it. It's just I was paying careful attention because they also obviously sources tend to pick their words carefully, what they want to tell you. And I was like, well, at no point have you said here that didn't happen. The conversation definitely happened. We know that much. Whether it was as blunt and abrupt as Mario was saying, whether it was a little bit more of a back and forth, whether there was anything that Mario said that actually frustrated Greg Maffei and led to a response, I don't know, and frustratingly never will know because I wasn't there at the time. But I also did sound it out with Andretti sources because I wondered if they'd actually distanced themselves from it a little bit and kind of leave Mario to be the front man who really makes the bold statements and carry on working in the background, and then when it backfires, potentially try and distance themselves, and they didn't. So that probably leads more credence to the fact that something along these lines was said or did happen. So yeah, it's not moving smoothly forward. We can put it that way.
Greeny, you had something to say. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I agree fully with Chris, obviously. I do find it surprising. And the point is, regardless of how it was said, he said it. It doesn't, no one's denying that. And I think there is huge tension. And I think the two things: one, Formula One should pull their necks in and get this done, because it's dragging on. They're perfectly capable of adding value to Formula One. I think the whole thing of the franchises and how each team is worth something, the teams genuinely won't admit. They don't want an 11th team because life is too good with 10, and the franchise values keep going up for those 10. Hence, they don't want an 11th. But I think that perhaps the Andrettis, who I don't think were the fault here, I think GM are probably the force behind getting Congress involved, which is their won't. They are an engine manufacturer and they feel hard done by, and they're trying to make Cadillacs for Europe, and it's not happening. So they are very heavily connected to the government, rightly so. So they've complained. But I think what should have happened is that Andretti and GM should have threatened Formula One with taking action rather than going public.
Well, that said, though, we don't know if they actually did that behind the scenes and didn't get a response. Almost got told, well, try it. I mean, I genuinely don't know, and this is just speculation. And similarly, but by the same token, like you say, they might not have done that at all. And then this is way overstretching straight off the bat to go this heavy. But as you say, you look at where some of the senators represent, and it does tally with maybe GM pushing on this front as well. And that is another aspect I have had put to me, that they actually don't feel it's quite as personal with the Andrettis, which is why the comment about Michael surprised me. But that it might actually be a way of GM trying to put some pressure on as well as part of a bigger picture. So, but obviously they don't want to be involved in something quite so public. So that's why it comes from the Andretti side.
Yeah, and I think GM, when they came out with the comment that, fine, they'd come to Formula One, but only with Andretti, was also a shot across the bows for Maffei and the rest of the boys trying to get GM into Formula One, regardless of what Andretti would do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I must add, we've had another comment as well from Christian Horner this week, who generally was quite sensible on this, but I'll admit, the write-ups and the headlines don't always allow people to focus on everything he said. But he said he'd absolutely welcome Andretti and GM in. He'd love to see them in. He says that Mario's a legend and that he thinks they should be in. But he says that in the perfect scenario, the one we want, is that they buy an existing team. That's what Audi have done. That strengthens everybody's position. That gets them a team, and everyone else is happier. And we're a much more tight-knit unit that can sustain future troubles we don't know that are coming. And I do get it to an extent that with COVID being so close to taking out a bunch of teams, and pre-COVID we had so many others that are actually they were on the brink, weren't they? Like Williams, Force India as it was, and then Racing Point. They were really in trouble. Even Sauber for a spell, when sponsorship had to be found from Alfa Romeo to try and basically become the Ferrari B team to keep going. Those sorts of things. I get that. That wasn't that long ago, but the world has totally changed. F1's setup has changed, and I don't see that repeating. Certainly not for a long time. And personally, if it does, then surely if you have more teams, you have more of a chance of a stronger core remaining. If you don't have more teams, then all you can do is go from 10 to 9 or 8 rather than 11 to 10 or 9. So, I see both sides of that coin, but I still don't think it fully holds up as a total argument.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I agree. You can't have a system where you have a Concord agreement and say, we are accepting bids, you accept 4 bids, and then say, oh, we're not accepting bids anymore. I mean, that's how it seems to play to the layman. I know that's a very simplistic view, but the point is they shot themselves in the foot by offering more than 10 franchise as part of the Concord agreement.
Yeah, and
absolutely. And someone's taken advantage of that, haven't they? And guess what Formula One's all about, whether you're a team in it or not? Taking advantage of the regulations.
Correct.
Yes. And if you can do it legally outside the regulations, then you do that too. But
Chris, one more question for Chris. Chris, me and John were talking about this. What about Haas? It seems that Gene doesn't want to put his hand in his pocket, not at the extent that other teams have been doing. Perhaps one of the reasons that Gunter left. Wouldn't Haas be the obvious buy for, and where could the pressure come from to basically oust the Haas team and replace it with Andretti?
My question was how could there something be done with the regulations that would say you got to make more investment or something? I don't know. We were just speculating on trying to get Haas, because they're not going to get anywhere if they don't invest money.
It's tough because we've seen an uptick in investment from Haas recently. Don't forget, this weekend they brought a bespoke package to this race designed for Monaco. They did invest in the car. Gene has put more money in based on the stronger start they've had. He just wanted proof that this team could perform better and that he wasn't wasting his money. And he insists he will do that and grow it sustainably. He's also got a much more close ally, closer to the team that he didn't used to have. Gunther Steiner kept everyone at a distance and ran it his way. And now Gene has a bit more of a view on it all. And they think actually, once they get an understanding of what is required, as I understand it, the team feel like Gene understands more how hard they work, what they've been doing, what they've been achieving, and what he can expect and what he needs to put in. So they feel like they're actually heading somewhere. And I've got to wrap this quickly, but I think that's a bit harsh as well to say, well, you know what, though, there's a bigger, potentially better team that could come in, so you have to sell. Haas were here and got through the COVID years too and invested when F1 wasn't quite so big.
Yep.
So it's slippery slope, especially if then the other teams go, well, hang on, what if they do that to us? So that's the tightrope F1 is walking.
Yeah, very good. Good assessment, Chris. All right, well, thanks, everybody. Thanks, Chris Medland. Thanks, Jonathan Green. And thanks, everybody, for tuning in. And go get yourself in front of a TV and watch the Indy 500 or listen to it on SiriusXM. I think you can listen to it on Channel 85. Thanks for tuning in. Talk to you next week.